Is faith in Nick Caley's offense warranted or not? I'm talking Texans today with Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
From H-Town to your town, today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Got a good show lined up for you today, the day ahead of preseason, so we got to talk about that. Faith in Nick Caley in his offense going into year two, is it warranted or not? Some camp standouts and maybe some guys who we were expected to solidify themselves on this roster who could potentially be on the bubble now through the first week and a half, 2 weeks of training camp. And just a look into the Houston Texans with Houston Chronicle's own Jonathan Alexander. I'm super excited for today's podcast. Shout out to my everydayers from the Himalayas for making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen of the day. And I'm your Texans credential media member and football analyst, John Hickman. With a fresh fade and all, he ready for tomorrow's preseason game. Jonathan Alexander joining the Locked On Texans podcast. I'm excited to talk Texans with you today. So I want to dive right into it. What's your temperature check on the Texans right now from camp? And what are some of the things that has really stood out the most to you?
A couple of things. I think, I wondered how good this defense could be compared to it last year. And I really do believe this when I say this, and I'm not even joking. I do think that they could potentially be better than they were last year. Now, obviously, teams will be able to adjust. But I think they have more talent top to bottom. Like, I really do. I actually didn't believe that before the Jadeveon Clowney signing. I just think he gives them another added element. I think the depth was the one thing missing from them at edge rusher, and now he gives them that. You look at Reese Shepard, what he brings, and then the rookie Caden McDonald, that defensive tackle, he's good depth as well. So
Reed Blankenship, Reed Shepard.
Yeah, sorry. You know what?
You ready for basketball season?
You know what? I did that in a video and had to cut it out. So sorry, Reed Blankenship. But no, I just think they're going to be better, and I see no reason to believe that their offense won't be better either. Just given that they added more pieces to the offensive line and their receivers are healthy. Now they got to remain healthy. Obviously, that's key. But I just see them being a better team and having the potential to go to a Super Bowl.
One thing that I don't think nobody may have talked about enough is the Houston Texans. They've signed a couple of guys right before training camp and during training camp in the receiver room. They brought some guys in to compete, and we obviously know that Jared Wayne has been having an excellent camp. Lewis Bond has been having a very good camp. And so I think for Houston right now, while they have not added any explosive vet or maybe a guy like a Keenan Allen, if they have to break the glass and go into maybe a practice squad guy or just a player that they've already had a relationship with, it does feel like while you can't replace a Nico Collins, it does feel like they have some guys that could be ready if they are called upon in their receiver room. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, is there a player who has changed your opinion of him from the beginning of camp?
Yeah, I would say like Colin Wright wasn't even on my radar.
Nobody's radar, but now he's like everybody's favorite undrafted rookie free agent.
Yeah, he's made plays just about every practice. Even had a pass deflection in the last practice that they just had, which was basically another scrimmage. I like what he brings. He can also, from what I hear, he can also tackle. He's not afraid to get put his hat in and make a tackle. So I think at this point, obviously we got a long way to go. We got 3 preseason games and a couple of joint practices, but I think he has the inside track to make the team. And then, I wondered if Keelan Rutledge was going to have an adjustment at center. I don't think obviously he's had to learn the position, but I think he's had a smooth transition so far.
What about his transition has been so smooth, though, for the listeners? Like, you've been out there every day, and I'm going to get on you about this in and out shirt. I know you're from the Carolinas, but we're going to talk about that. But what about Keelan Rutledge over the last 2 weeks that has put faith in you that this kid is going to be all right, aside from being able to piss off Will Anderson Jr. and cause some scuffles in training camp.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you look at guys who have never played center and then they all of a sudden play center, you just wonder if the snap is going to be good. And obviously, the Texans had some problems with that in the playoff game against the Steelers. So you wondered if CJ Stroud and Keelan Reynolds would have to get used to each other. But I haven't seen any of those problems so far. And we know what Keelan Rutledge brings in the run game. We know he's a mean blocker, and he's not afraid to get in a scuffle or two. So all of that put together, the good snaps, the being able to run block, he's got to pass block consistently, obviously. I think he's ready. I think he will most likely be the week one starter if everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, he's trending that way. You talk about the center spot, then we also bring up receiver a little bit. Have you learned anything differently about Nick Caley in his offense? And, because some people are not sold on him right now. So do you feel like he has the pieces to fuel this offense in a positive direction? What exactly is Nick Caley trying to build over there at the Reliance Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, I have no reason to believe that he'll take a step back or they won't be improved. I mean, you got to look at last season and how last season went. Obviously, those first 3 games weren't good by any stretch of the imagination. But, I think the Texans, the fact that they lost a lot of their tight ends early in camp, I think really hampered what Nick Caley felt like he could do. And then the fact that they didn't have a running game, and I think that was probably arguably the biggest thing. Now, Caley obviously would never say that outright because he's a guy who seems to want to take responsibility for what happened. But the reality of the situation is they didn't have a running game. Nobody expected Joe Mixon to miss the entire season. They planned for Joe Mixon to be there. And then when they signed Nick Chubb, he obviously wasn't what he was before he suffered the injury. So I think they were really hampered by injuries and unexpected absences from people. And now he has more depth. You got David Montgomery. You got your tight ends healthy. I think that gives him the option to do more things. You even got Tank Dell, who, they hope is going to be healthy. And he gives you more weapons. I think the Texans really needed more weapons opposite of Nico Collins. And now you potentially have that with Jaden Higgins' emergence and Tank Dell returning.
Yeah, and I definitely want to pick your brain about how this offense can impact C.J. Stroud in his second year. So we got more Texans talk on today's podcast, and Jonathan Alexander is definitely sticking around. Support for today's episode comes from Square. Behind so many of the local businesses people visit every day is Square, a platform designed to help businesses sell, manage, and grow. Whether it's a neighborhood coffee shop, a packed-out sports bar on game day, or your favorite restaurant, Square brings payments, banking, and more together in one connected system. It helps business owners spend less time managing technology and more time focusing on their customers. Square isn't just a payment processor. It's a complete business platform built to simplify the day-to-day, from accepting major payment platforms and payment methods to managing inventory and helping businesses access their earnings faster. Listen, Square gives owners the tools they need to run their business with confidence. And I love Square. I've talked about this business a lot, but it's a spot over here called Burger Fresh that I go to frequently. Great burgers, fresh burgers, great customer service. But what I love about the place so much is I'm in and out. My receipt is emailed to me instantly just in case I need to go back and check anything. But they have their rewards program, and I can use their rewards without even thinking about it. It just feels smooth every time. And yes, you can tell that they got Square running everything behind the scenes because of how smooth it's operating. So if you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. Right now, get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's Square, SQUARE.com/go/LockedOnNFL. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. All right, we got Jonathan Alexander of The Cron back talking Texans. Before we dive into that Texas talk, in and out, man. What you doing with this shirt on, man? I know you don't like it that much.
I like In-N-Out. I don't see nothing wrong with it. It's
That's
a good
it.
burger. They got a quality burger. The fries not great, but they got a quality burger. I love going to In-N-Out anytime I go to California, and they got one in Houston too, or Katy too. So I'll check that one out too.
Yeah, man. I'm
I mean, it's better than Whataburger.
You know what? To be fair, everything's better than Whataburger right now.
There you go.
Being a true Houstonian and Texan, Whataburger has not been the same since they sold the company. It's
That's what
been
I'm saying.
downhill for the last 10
I'm glad you
years.
admit it. I'm glad
Yeah,
you
I
admit
can
it.
admit that, but I also want you to admit you eating a pretty mid burger.
I'm not gonna call In-N-Out mid. I think it's on the fast food scale. It's like an 8.
Okay,
On the fast food scale.
it's an 8 to you.
On the fast food scale, yes.
Okay, let's talk about 7. CJ Stroud. Let's get back to some Texas talk. What are some of your thoughts on Stroud through the first couple of weeks of training camp, and how have you seen him grown from last year? It was very difficult for him last year, learning a lot on the fly without the necessary weapons. And so, as I ask you about Nick Caley and what you think about his offense, how will everything kind of translate over to Stroud being more successful this year?
Yeah, I mean, I like what I've seen so far. Even the mistakes that he's made, he's been able to bounce back. So I think a lot of people wondered after that playoff game, was that going to carry over? Was he going to allow that to mess with his psyche? And, you haven't seen that in camp. You've seen him play confidently. Now, obviously, the defense has gotten the best of the offense more often than the offense has gotten them, but the offense has had good days. And we didn't see that a ton last year. But you're seeing more good days, even in the last practice. But today,
Say that again, please, for people that are still kind of doubting where the Texans' offensive progression is. More positive days this year compared to last year.
Yeah, there have been some days that the Texans have won against the defense. And I'll be honest with you, 2024 and 2025, combined, I can count on my hand how many days the offense won. And one of the days, it didn't even look like the defense had showed up. Like they were just kind of, going through the motions. So, I mean, I just say that to say that the offense is definitely much improved. They know what they're doing. They feel more comfortable in the system. One of the biggest things D'Amico talked about was getting in and out of the huddle, getting the call. And I think they're doing that. I think that's helped CJ Stroud having more support from the running game. And you just see that confidence in him. And I think I can only see him, improving, having an improved year this year. I don't think that playoff loss and what happened in that game is going to affect him at all.
You don't?
Nah, not at all. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowl player this year, but I don't think you're going to see him just because that game happened. He's going to have a down year. I think he's going to have an improved year because the pieces around him are better. But CJ Stroud's performance is often, based on the pieces around him.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of young pieces around him, no running game. Struggled early on, played well in the middle of the season, got the concussion, was kind of a little bit up and down, but had some good games. And then the playoffs, obviously, he didn't play very well. But yeah, so I don't see any drop off happening.
So overall, both sides of the ball, and we can even include special teams on this list. Give me a few of your camp standouts. So some players that maybe they wasn't on your radar. Obviously, Colin Wright is one of those guys, but just offensively, defensively, and maybe a special team player too, because we were out there Saturday where it felt like, oh, wait, Wooders has kind of arrived a little bit. So, who are some guys that we absolutely need to kind of circle and track as preseason and this training camp period continues?
Yeah, Wooders was the first person I was going to say. He's been getting some run even with the first team when the Texans go in their base 4-3 defense. And I think that really speaks to the intensity he plays with. He's like probably second on the team in most fights. So he's really I didn't think he was gonna have an impact. I thought he was gonna be primarily special teams player, but they like him. Lewis Bond has had a few catches and made some nice plays, mostly with the second team. He's gotten even a little bit of run with the first team. So he's played really well, or has played well. Marlon Klein is another one who surprised me. And that's because a lot of people were really down on him when the Texans picked him in the second round. They were thinking that, he was a project, that they picked him, that he was a 4th or 5th round pick. And I'm not saying he's playing 2nd round pick worthy, but he definitely looks like a guy who can contribute at some point in his career, if not this first year. His athleticism, he has some crazy athleticism.
Yeah.
He's dropped a couple passes, but he's also made plays, had a couple touchdowns. So he's one really who, when I see him, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what they saw in him.
Yeah, well, with Klein, like the first few days of camp where we saw those drop passes, and I would come on and talk about just his athletic ability standing out, but wanting to see more from Klein putting it all together. And it felt like maybe since last Wednesday, he's putting more and more good moments together within his offense. But I noticed you didn't name a running back. You didn't. Obviously, we know what David Montgomery can be, but you didn't name any of the backfield guys.
I mean, I think Woody Marks has played well, and he's looked a lot better than I thought. But I think, it's expected that you get a guy who's going to have a second-year jump. And I think Jawar Jordan has been consistent as well. I think he's their running back 3.
But he's dealing with the hip flexor right now.
Yeah, he's dealing with a little something right now. But, I mean, I think he comes back and he'll probably fill in just as he did. Running back 4 is a little bit more difficult. Do they keep British Brooks, who's out right now, or do they go with one of the rookies? I think that remains to be seen. I haven't seen anyone separate from the other, but I have liked what I've seen from Woody Marks and Jahar Jordan.
Now, as we get ready for tomorrow's preseason game at home at the Reliance Stadium, hopefully we get some fans out there tailgating because it's football time of the year, so let's get those junkies out there. Any players that you feel like are on the bowl that need good moments?
Yeah, I look at Jared Wayne, who's like on the cusp, and it'll be hard for him to push Lewis Bond down, but he's had a good camp.
He's had a very good camp.
Yeah, but for him to make the team, he's going to have some really good preseason games. Justin Watson is another guy. I think Marte Mapu at the linebacker spot has to have some good games. I really haven't seen him stand out in any of the practices, and he should be that first linebacker off the bench, but he hasn't done that. So I think he has to have a good game. I think Tremont Smith, because Colin Wright is battling for that spot,
which will be CB4.
Yeah,
essentially.
And Tremont Smith does offer special teams value, so that's what helps him out. And I think he's a solid, solid backup as well. Not starter guy, but solid backup. So, I think he still has a chance to make the team, but I think he needs to perform well so the Texans aren't saying, oh, well, we could cut this guy if needed. And then Jake Andrews, of course. I think Jake Andrews has a harder path to make the team because Keelan Rutledge is number 1, playing well, and number 2, he only plays center position. And if they feel like Evan Brown is playing well as well, they'll probably keep a guy like Evan Brown or Jared Patterson because those guys play both center and guard.
Yeah, and then Fabetu Weewu, he's also a guy that can flex across that offensive line as well. So Andrews is a guy that I talked about just kind of fighting an uphill battle right now simply because this is a roster put together by Nick Caserio that values versatility sometimes more than they value a guy being great at one thing. So he's in a weird position, and it's kind of odd because he was a starter center last year for the Texans, and he has some decent to good moments where now it feels like maybe Rutledge is so good, could be so good at his job where he can just push Andrews out the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no doubt about that.
Just my last question to you, being around the team daily, what's one thing you think Texas fans should know about Houston this year?
One thing that they should know. I mean, we talked a little bit about it earlier. I just think this defense is going to be elite. I think they have one of the more talented teams in the league, probably behind the Rams. I think the Rams have crazy talent, especially if they add Aaron Donald.
Which, by the way, like that should be illegal. Like they need
really
to step in on that.
They really don't need it. They're elite without him. And then you get him, and he's fresh. That's going to be a crazy picture. But I really do believe the Texans are one of the more talented teams in the league, especially their defense, just top to bottom. They don't have any weaknesses when I look at that defensive team. So, I really do believe as long as they stay healthy, they can go as far as they want to go.
Jonathan, thank you for stopping by today's podcast, Talking Texans with me. Let everybody know where they can find all of your amazing work and your social media.
Yeah, so you can find me on X at JONM Alexander, and then on IG and TikTok, it's the same as JONM Alexander _. In YouTube as well, that is JONM Alexander _Chronicle.
I'll tell you what, don't create a parody page and lie on the Chronicle, because
bro,
Jonathan's not gonna let it slide.
I don't play about my reputation, man. That's one thing I don't play about. Parody or not, man.
Don't play around with him. That's how y'all know he's bringing y'all the truth. He is there with the Houston Texans daily. Does a great job over at the Houston Chronicle. Thank you for stopping by, Jay.
Appreciate you.
Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their next game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make your free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with everyday games, whether you're following your favorite team like the Houston Astros or keeping an eye out on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep, so now get your chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. And I'm just looking at it right now. For Yordan Alvarez, I'm looking at the regular season home run leaders who can win it all in 2026. $10 right now. Well, let's not do 10. Let's do $100. $100 right now can be turned into $270. That's if you're rolling with the hometown team. Let's just say you want to go and disgrace yourself and maybe go with a New York Yankee. Well, $100 right now placed on Ben Rice could get you $1,900. So, maybe that is a investment you want to look into. Right? Maybe not. But I know you're ready to play your game today. So join all of the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official betting partner of the MLB. Again, visit FanDuel.com. Closing out today's podcast, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Nick Caley going into his second year and if faith is really warranted or not. Now, Caley was recently on Peter Schrager's podcast. You guys may know him from NFL Network. But he was talking about C.J. Stroud. He mentioned that Stroud has been working all offseason, highlighted his intentionality from the quarterback spot, his attention to detail, the leadership, and the urgency. He's also mentioned that, hey, listen, we've added some volume to the offense. And then he also highlighted in that conversation there with Peter Schrager that it's players over plays, right? You got the players over play mentality. He's going to tailor the offense to the players that they have. And so when he mentions that, I say, well, again, I've stood firmly on that throughout the year. Anybody with eyes, and I got 4 of them, can see that if you remove the first 3 games away from your memory, right? Like if that never happened, you would have saw the Houston Texans, who only scored, I think, 12.5 points in those first 3 games combined on average compared to closer to 20. You saw the offense improve with what the Texans had to work with. So I think that he has been, firm on, I'm a players over plays kind of guy, right? I got to tailor my offense with what I have to work with. And let's look at what he had to work with. At the tight end spot, it was only one tight end all last year. Dalton chose nobody else. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to the quarterback. It's not fair to the offensive line. Because of that, we've had to see Blake Fisher out there because of the inserting of Blake Fisher at that, inline tight end spot, that jumbo package, that extra tackle out there on the field. Did that help Houston try to establish a run? Yes, it did. And Houston had moments throughout the year where, as a team, they were able to rush the ball for over 100 yards. But that also put a lot of limitations on what that offense could and couldn't do because they didn't have another tight end available to go to be able to block and also make plays in the passing game. You can say the same about the running back unit. You can also say the same about the wide receiver units. And one thing that we don't talk about enough is he had to make it work with 4 different left guards, right? And so you can have a players over plays mentality in that sense, but I think in both cases, you're going to fail. And ultimately for Houston, it failed when they took on the New England Patriots in snow in the playoffs and wasn't able to run the ball because the offensive line wasn't able to establish any run blocking dominance at the line of scrimmage or succeed at the second level. And you lost Dalton Schultz in the first quarter. You also didn't have Nico Collins. Nobody else was able to rise to the occasion. And yes, 4 interceptions on C.J. Stroud in a winnable game looks bad because it is bad. There's no way around it. But the operation for Houston all last year was rocky to start, and it was rocky when they finished. So I say that to say this. The players over plays mentality, we should see that elevate the offense this year because unlike last year, you have a full tight end room. Unlike last year, you have a solidified offensive line, at least on paper, and we will start to see how that transitions into real live game action. I think we'll get a good look preseason 1, but we'll get the best look when we get to that preseason game 2. And even with the wide receiver unit, Higgins now is not the Higgins we saw last year. Xavier Hutchinson, who I think settled into his role a lot last year, had a career year. He's going to be in the role where the expectation of him is to be that possession receiver who can make plays consistently at all 3 levels, but more so in that 8 to 12 yard range, right? That's what you kind of want out of Xavier Hutchinson. And obviously you expect for him to make a couple of plays throughout the year downfield. Foster Moreau, Marlon Klein, Kay Stover, those are the other 3 tight ends that I believe will help Houston's offense in every different way, running the ball, passing the ball, and just being available when needed. So that players over plays mentality, we should see a lot from those additional players added and brought in this year that to elevate this offense. But ultimately, for a lot of people, they still feel like Nick Caley is not the right guy. People feel like Nick Caley is going to be the reason, and for some people, still, based off their postseason performance for Stroud, some fans still feel like Stroud is going to be the reason why this defense doesn't hold the Lombardi at the end of the year. I'm here to tell you that, for one, expectations need to be tailored until we're able to get through the first quarter of the season. Buffalo, Bengals, Dallas, and who is that? Is that the Jags early on, or is that the Colts? There's a division game early in those first 4 games of the year. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, and whoever's going to be taking snaps for the Indianapolis Colts. But he's in a better situation now. He is. And as a play caller, look at it like this. For Caley in his first year as a play caller, knowing what they knew about his offense, did we see a real attempt during free agency, during the draft period last year, throughout the regular season, did we ever see an attempt from the front office guys to ease his transition into his first year? We did not. So while Stroud was having to learn this new offense on the go, on the fly, and with not a lot to work with, so was Caley as a play caller. But you also saw him at times do well enough to gain the lead and trust the defense. And I'm going to say this. You also saw moments throughout the year where, even if we go back to that Patriot game, there's a touchdown called off the board that switches the entire game. That flips the game. Momentum is now on the Houston Texans side. There were times throughout the year where penalties were called back in crucial moments that took points off the board for Houston. So the pieces in 26 are much better than the pieces in 2025. Now, the expectation will be, okay, Caley, you got the pieces. Can you make sure that there's real urgency on the offense? We shouldn't have, the play clock ticking down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're still trying to get a call in, or your quarterback is just having a small amount of time to change the play at the line of scrimmage. Shouldn't have those issues, right? Situational awareness, right? We shouldn't see K Stover in the Stover tush push. We shouldn't see any of that, right? We should see much better tempo, and I'm glad he highlighted we've added volume to the offense. Let's see what that looks like. It's already out there in the atmosphere. So what does that volume look like with a revamped offensive line, a revamped running back room with the addition of David Montgomery in year 2 of Woody Marks, with a revamped tight end room, and you got guys like Jade Higgins who seems to be ready for a year 2 leap. We haven't even talked about Jalen Noel yet. The talk of camp in that receiver spot has been Jaden Higgins and Lewis Bond. Though I know I've been able to tell you guys Xavier Hutchinson has been pretty much that third receiver, and on the unofficial depth chart, that's where he's been listed as right now. So how will this urgency, tempo, volume, and a better understanding of the players that you have here for both Caley and Stroud, how will that translate over to wins? We'll have to see. But again, as I said before, the Texans offense is in a much better space now than they were a year ago, and maybe even 2 years ago when they brought in Joe Mixon and Stephon Diggs. We will see. But thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, and follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Also on Instagram at Some Sports Guy with 2 eyes. You got any Texans thoughts on your mind? Shoot me a DM or hit me on the timeline. Until next time, ladies and gents, and Texan fans across the nation, we got a game tomorrow. Let the bodies hit the flow. Let the bodies hit the flow. Let the Chargers hit the flow. Let the roar. I'm out.